Good morning, Jim. Here I am with my incredibly crude and unprofessional video that you asked for. So let's get started. My lesson plan module is about what to do if there are no lesson plans left or where to find the actual lesson plans for the teacher. Now we know everything there is to know about what Source for Teachers requires from you, but really 99% of our job is teaching the children. I'm a real firm believer in when substitutes come into the classroom, they really do need to teach. It's not a play day or a free day. Oh, we remember what that was like when you walked into school and you saw that person standing there and you went, free day, no work today, whatever. But kids are given a finite amount of time to learn. We give them 180 days a school year, and when a teacher is out for a day and we don't teach, we've actually stolen a day of education from those children. So here we go. Let's teach. Let's get in there and teach. Plus, it's the most fun part of the day anyway. So you get into the classroom, where do you find the teacher's lesson plans? Well, usually the teacher will leave something really simple right on his or her desk for you to follow, written specifically for a substitute teacher. Sometimes they look like this. If you look at it carefully, it tells you the times. Make sure you stick to those times because we don't know if there is a special education teacher or an assistant or a teaching assistant that's coming in or out, or a child that comes into your class for a subject and then leaves for other subjects. So follow the times. Also follow the textbooks and any worksheets or papers that the teacher might have listed here. Make sure you have available and ready to go on your desk. The worst thing you can say to the kids is, wait a second while I see what we do next. Go ahead and talk amongst yourselves. That's when you get into some trouble. So go through the lesson plans, read through them, make sure your materials are at hand, and of course this I would like to have maybe on a slide during the actual video presentation. Check for any kind of notes that the teacher might also have in that lesson plan for children with special needs. Maybe a child needs to sit closer to you during the lesson, or maybe the child gets fewer problems on a test or a quiz that you're giving that day. So read through the lesson plans carefully. Well, sometimes the teacher doesn't have time to write something specifically for the substitute. So they will leave their actual lesson plan that they have to submit into the office, usually at the beginning of the week for the whole following week. That means that there are lesson plans for that teacher somewhere in that school building, and that's what we have to locate. Now, the lesson plans that are turned into the office can have a lot of extra information on it that isn't really germane to the substitute teacher. For instance, this lesson plan, which of course I'd like to have up on a slide, has a lot of coding in here for special needs students and coding for Common Core curriculum. What we need to do is look past that coding, don't worry about it, and let's look at a few things that are important. Again, times are very important. Stick to the times. This one has the standards and they list as M.A.1.A.1. Not important to us, but you could read through the standard and see what it is. It will give you an idea of what you're supposed to accomplish that day. This teacher also lists essential questions. Some school districts require teachers to put these in. These are basically the objective of the lesson that the teacher is going to cover. This lesson plan also includes vocabulary. Vocabulary is important. It's obviously important for the theme of the lesson. Maybe put that up on the board. It can be a point of discussion later on in your lesson. So look through what the teacher has here. This teacher actually had times down for pacing. They have a sponge activity, which is like a do now activity, which is like a bell activity, something that the children do immediately upon entering the classroom. If you follow the teacher's procedures and routines, the kids already know to do this. They go on autopilot when they come in. If you're not sure what a sponge bell or do now activity is, you can always ask one of the kids. Most of the time, and I'd say from grades 1 on up to grade 12, there's somebody that will be helpful to you. This is a lesson plan about mathematics, and it has some things in here. It's an algebra class, integrated advanced algebra. I'm a music teacher. I know how to count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it. I don't know how to do algebra. So I might ask the kids, hey, who's the algebra expert in the class? And call that child up to the front of the room and have them do some team teaching with me You would be the facilitator, manager of the classroom, and the child will help you out with the content area. Let the kids peer teach, break them up into small cooperative learning groups, anything to get the lesson accomplished and get the teacher's lesson plan finished. The lesson plan too might not have the location of materials that are supposed to be available for the teacher to use, like textbooks or worksheets. Again, you can use that helpful student in the classroom. If you're really stumped, maybe a teacher next door or across the hall can help you as well. In a primary class, the actual lesson plan will still have all that coding. We'll still have times noted for the substitute teacher to use. This one has math standards in it also. And this also has performance objectives in it, where how often the children should achieve, an 80 or above performance level. Again, this should be on a slide. What you have to do is look, this teacher actually put advanced preparation by the teacher in here, which says copies of an assessment worksheet. I would locate the assessment worksheet and get it copied. Now, you might not have access to the copier. A lot of school districts have them by code or a swipe card that the teachers have to use, and that is where networking and being real polite and nice to the teachers next door and across the hall might come in handy, because they will share their code with you so you can get the things copied that you need. Now, if you do not see lesson plans left on the teacher's desk, your next stop should be the main office. The secretaries are very, very busy in the morning, so I would definitely look through the room thoroughly before you go to the secretary and ask for assistance. But they will have a copy of the teacher's lesson plans on file. If the secretary cannot readily put their hands on them, they might hand you a substitute folder with emergency lesson plans. Emergency lesson plans are things that the teacher has copied off in the event of an emergency and could not leave lesson plans for you. This is usually review material, busy type work, but it will give you an idea of some of the themes that the teacher is teaching throughout her or his curriculum. Go ahead and do that. In that subfolder, also look for notes from the teacher. They usually note when special needs children have special considerations that must be considered. So, still nothing? No emergency lesson plans? The secretary cannot put their hands on the teacher's lesson plan? Well, here's where you visit your neighboring teachers. If you're in younger grades and there's 5 fourth grades, the other 4 fourth grade teachers can probably gather together materials for you to have a good day. If you're in an upper grade, like a high school, where the teacher across the hall is math and that one's biology and you're teaching history that day, they might not be able to help you as much, but they still might be familiar with that teacher's classroom and where the textbooks are that he or she uses. Now with older students, the kids come in, you ask to see the textbook that they're using, and a lot of times those kids will tell you what page they were on the day before. I never tell the kids I don't have a lesson plan or something wasn't left, because that can open you up to some, tricks and games by the kids. So I usually just tell them, what were you doing yesterday? Let's look at it. You can conduct a review of that material. You can also look through that teacher's manual that's on the teacher's desk and find some supplemental activities to do in there. You can conduct a review of the material using the accompanying pages for that lesson. You can have a student come to the board and demonstrate a mini lesson. This is particularly helpful if you're doing a math or a spelling or a language arts lesson. If the students seem to have mastery of the lesson that they did the previous day, you can go on to the next lesson in the book, but make sure that at the end of the day when you're writing your summary for the teacher, you note that and you note exactly what you did that day so that when they come back, they know where to begin. Make sure that at the end of every lesson and every class period, you do a little button-up activity. Now, some easy ideas of button-up activities are, and this I would love to have on a PowerPoint and they can slide in one at a time, exit tickets. An exit ticket is just what it sounds like. It's a little ticket that they fill out and they give it to you upon exit from the classroom. Some things that you could do on an exit ticket are maybe ask the students to write 2 things down they learned that lesson and 1 thing they would like to learn the next day. You could ask them to Put a question on your exit ticket that you think your teacher is going to ask on the next examination. You could play 2 truths and a lie on the exit ticket. Tell me 2 truths about Mesopotamia and 1 lie. And if you still have extra time at the end of a lesson period, collect them, read those things to the kids, and let them guess which ones are true and which ones are lie. But it should be a button up, a summary of that lesson. Another way to button up a lesson is to do a quiz. Let the kids make up a quiz. What questions do you think your teacher's going to ask? You could then read them out in class or have the kids answer them on the whiteboard behind you. You could do a debate. Children today really don't know the rules of debate, and sadly, even our presidential debates didn't teach them what the rules are of debating. But you could go through a debate, divide the class up into 2 groups. Let's debate ancient Rome and the government and how was it effective to our government today? If you have a well-behaved class, it's always okay to do a discussion. Encourage the discussion of the topic that you just had. I sometimes do pros and cons charts. What are the pros and cons of learning integrated advanced algebra? And the kids usually come up with some really clever ideas. If they're a lower grade, maybe a topic that is somewhat germane to what they're learning about. What are the pros and cons of Tom Sawyer helping Huck Finn to paint that fence? What could he have done differently? Illustrations are a great way to button up a lesson too. Sometimes we forget about the arts when we are in a classroom. Illustrate the point that you're making. Illustrate a cell in a plant. Illustrate the climax of the story. Illustrate the characters that you read. All right? Sometimes you can read a summary paragraph, just a short summary to check the understanding of the lesson at hand. Writing in all subject areas is perfectly fine, even if you're in a music class or an art class. Cross-curriculum writing is great. It is real life, and it is a focus of a lot of curriculum today. All right, so those are some button-up activities that I like to do. Also, if you have extra time left at the end of a class period, check the teacher's manual. I would love to have a slide of a teacher's manual here so they can see the supplemental things that are written. A teacher's manual contains the pictures of the student pages in the textbook, but if you read the extra material on the side, the bottom, in the back of the teacher's manual, you can see a lot of supplemental activities that coordinate with the pages that you covered. It's very easy to follow. All right. If the teacher gives a homework assignment in class, it is perfectly fine to allow the students to begin a homework assignment. If they were really well-behaved class, and I might set this up at the beginning of the lesson as an incentive to work hard, I might say we can do our homework together in pairs or in cooperative learning groups, or they can do it individually. But don't tell them that it's an option. Tell them they must get started on their homework. Older children like to start their homework in class. They're busy young men and young women because they're out with jobs. They have a lot of after-school activities and sports that they do. So starting homework or getting a jump start on the work at hand really is helpful to them. All right. Some other things that you can do is to pull from your own substitute bag some of the fun activities that you have planned that might be germane to that class lesson. For example, in a math lesson with younger kids, have a set of flashcards in your sub bag. There's so many things you can do with flashcards. You can divide the children up into 2 groups. You can let them answer the question. Whoever gets it right first gets to go to the board and put a point. Simple game, takes no preparation whatsoever. With older kids, you can put a few math problems on the board. Remember that teacher's manual? In the back of the teacher's manual in math classes in particular, there's usually extra problems that are supplemental to that lesson for reinforcement. Put them on the board and let the kids try it. For literature or language arts classes, I like to carry picture books around with me. And because I like music, I chose picture books that have a music theme. This book I use with all grade levels in language arts. For older kids, I might read some of the lyrics that Paul McCartney wrote and ask the children to interpret what they think John Lennon meant by those lyrics. With younger children, I might just show them a picture and say, let's count how many circles we can see in the picture. Picture books are great for a lot of subject areas, but in particular language arts, okay? You might be reading a novel with the kids or a chapter of a story. You can play that game, Two Truths and a Lie, once again, where the kids can tell two truths and a lie about a character. I've already had older kids use their social media skills to write, say, a Facebook page for Romeo. Relationship? It's complicated. The kids have fun doing that. You can also have them act out parts of a story or a short chapter that they're reading. Do it all without words. How about writing a rap about a story? And there's always that one kid in class that wants to spin around on their backs when they do it. Fun stuff to do. I have already taken the Sunday comics, whited out the dialogue, put it in a plasticine file, handed out to the kids, and allowed them to write their own dialogue for that cartoon. Taking a comic strip idea further, they're reading a novel or a story. How about saying you have 4 blocks on your page? Let's tell the whole story in just 4 frames. Illustrate it and write dialogue that goes with it. Newspapers are fun to have in your sub bag, and they can be old newspapers. You can cut out headlines, talk about the headline. What do you think the story will be about? Or we just read this story in language arts. If we were writing a newspaper headline, how can we make a concise and enticing headline to get other people to read this story? You can write about current events. You can use story starters. Google story starters for teachers, and you'll come up with thousands of them that might be really fun to write about. You can put these into your sub bag. Another thing I like to carry around with me too are Mad Libs. Mad Libs are great for upper elementary, middle school children. They're out there in dollar stores. You can find them where they do the parts of speech. They fill out the Mad Lib and you read the stories together. Sometimes they come out really funny and the kids enjoy doing them. Moving on to science or social studies. Word searches are great to do. Have prepared in your sub bag a couple blanks, just grids. Hand them out to kids. Put your science vocabulary on the word search, switch the papers, and let the kids do word searches. You can do a picture book about the subject. I've already, in cellular biology, had the kids make an ABC picture book with using the vocabulary of that chapter, illustrating it with definitions. They enjoy doing that a lot. Also in science, you could read about a scientist or explorer from that particular period of time. If you're learning about space and you have a little extra time left at the end of class, why not Google Neil Armstrong and see what his contribution to science was?